So, with that being said, our first speaker is Eileen Hayes, President and CEO of Amos House.
I've never been on a stage like this. I'm so excited and nervous. Hi everybody. Good evening. I want to take this moment to thank Alisha for asking me to join with these amazing women tonight to talk to you about my Note2Self. I must say that I'm intimidated and in awe in the presence of such incredible women, and I'm honored to share the stage with you tonight. I'd like to talk with you tonight about overcoming fear. I was born and raised in the north end of New York City. My parents both came from this country, from Ireland, and had the equivalent of an 8th grade reading education level. I remember my mom lied about having a high school diploma because she figured nobody would go back to Ireland to find out if it were true, so she did a job. I was one of 7 children. I was the 5th girl, followed by 2 brothers. And so when Alisha asked for a picture, I laughed because there were plenty of my first 2 sisters, none of me, and then lots of my brothers, because my parents got tired of taking pictures of girls. When I was a child, my life was overrun by fear. I grew up in a tenement apartment building, and I was terrified of the rats and the roaches. I lived in a building where there was a lot of violence at night, especially on Friday and Saturday night, and I was terrified of the fights. Terrified that my father would not make it home because he'd stop at the bar after working 11 hours every day, and often didn't make it home until it was time to turn around and go back again. Side note, he was a New York City bus driver. I had fear of the man who assaulted me, and I had fear of the God that I had turned to for comfort, but I had felt abandoned by. I was raised by nuns, and I was afraid of the nuns, and I loved the nuns all at the same time. I was afraid of the neighbors because I was afraid they were going to kill each other. And unfortunately, one night I witnessed a neighbor kill his father. I was afraid of the night, and I was afraid of the morning. I never knew what would come. I was afraid of love, and I was afraid of not being loved. I was afraid to be alone, and I was afraid to be with someone. I had a tremendous fear of failing as well as a fear of succeeding. I both feared attention and feared not getting attention. When I became a teenager, I threw myself into my fear. I was going to extinguish my fear by going as fast as I could. I began to live my life with an intensity that had no bounds. I became fearless and a little reckless. I stood on the corners in Greenwich Village, proselytizing in the name of Jesus. I spent weeks on a commune in Arkansas. Left a note on my kitchen table one day that said, "Mom, go to Arkansas." Came back a month later. I was 17. I tried to run my fear into the ground by becoming a runner, and I ran 6 miles a day. And for a period of time in my life, I starved myself because I felt like if I got thinner and thinner and thinner, I would be okay. A lot of girls do that. I worked my fear by becoming an alcoholic. Workaholic, not alcoholic, sorry. That's a slip. But all of these attempts on me left me more afraid, and truthfully, it was never enough. Never enough. I was never enough. I was never smart enough, pretty enough, funny enough. No matter what, never enough. I thought I had to have all the answers, but I was ashamed of being a know-it-all, because I was smart. But I felt like if I showed how smart I was, I'd be a know-it-all. I was rigid and scared and could not really allow joy in my life. When I was a young girl, I was inadvertently taught to be afraid by the simple fact that I believed that I needed boys. Boys would determine if I was attractive or smart and capable. If I didn't have a boyfriend, there was something wrong with me. And all of my girlfriends felt the same way, but we couldn't really talk about that. If I was strong and outspoken or too loud or too forceful, boys wouldn't like me. I remember being consumed by anxiety and worry and never really being sure what my opinion should be, what I thought. I didn't really have a lot of self-confidence, so I used to track and figure out what the right answer was and got really good at being able to give the answer that I thought whoever I was in front of wanted to hear from me. That way I could fit in. When I look back at this time in my life, I have a hard time liking that person, but I do have tremendous compassion for her. I see her as resilient and a survivor, and I recognize that she did the best she could. I spent many years in therapy working on how my past trauma impacted who I was and who I would become as a woman. What I discovered was that the only way I would ever really overcome my fear was by learning to be still. I had to learn to sit with my fear and allow it to wash over me over and over again until eventually it lost its power. I learned to listen to myself, and by listening, I could differentiate between rational fear and irrational fear. I began to embrace my fear and allow it to be my guide. I had a very strong intuition and a sixth sense that I now respect and honor, and I see this as a gift that I must use in the service of good every day. Fear is a powerful emotion that can propel us to action. It's an ancient response that can anticipate danger and move us to find safety. As I've gotten older, I've learned to rely on the two parts of my brain. The conscious brain that processes facts and relies on a series of memories to sort out experiences, but more importantly, the subconscious brain, lodged in the amygdala, that triggers a response before we're even consciously aware that there's a problem. And this is where traumatic memories live, and where Christy Blasey Ford stored her memories of the sound of laughter when Brett Kavanaugh and his friends assaulted her. These memories come to us in smells and sounds and touch and through our eyes and our ears and our fingers. They're valuable signs to help us move, to protect ourselves. And at times they alert us to present danger, but at times the danger is in the remembering of an old memory that we acknowledge now and can let go. These memories are our North Star. They help us to reset, scan the environment, and develop a plan. Most of the time, I can regroup and know that right now in the present moment I'm safe. The memories are a witness to the past and a way of honoring my experience. And when I experience these fleeting sensations, I'm grateful that I have the words to explain the rise of the fear. I know that my body keeps the score. I've become adept at listening to it. I hear it in the early morning hours when I'm alone. I hear it as I sit here and I ask you to bear witness to me and my life. I've learned to trust this voice. It's my friend and my confidant. And my note to self is my promise to believe me, to hold on to my truth and continue to work to care for myself. To refrain from minimizing my experience because it wasn't that bad or other women have had it worse than me. My note to self is to do whatever I can to help my daughters, one of whom is with me tonight, and granddaughters understand that they too can trust themselves. They can use fear to protect themselves, and they can honor their experiences, both good and bad. May they always be strong enough to say no when they want to say no, and yes when they want to say yes, and they can also say yes and then change their minds, and their decisions will be respected. My notes to self is to allow joy to rise out of my fear. As C.S. Lewis says, I am surprised by joy every day. I want to feel this joy in the beauty of a sunset, the sound of a child's laughter, and the warm embrace of a lover. In joy, there is no fear. It's a pure, unadulterated emotion that cannot be tempered or denied. Joy wipes out fear and allows us to feel unbounded love. In true love, there's also no fear, because when we love someone completely, we shield them from fear. We convince them that they are enough. They're powerful, capable, beautiful, and strong enough. Thich Nhat Hanh says, fear keeps us focused on the past or worried about the future. If we can acknowledge our fear, we can realize that right now we are okay. Right now, today, we are still alive, and our bodies are working marvelously. Our eyes can still see the beautiful sky. Our ears can still hear the voices of a loved one. As I've gotten older, I've learned to hold on to the silver linings from my childhood rather than dark clouds. I know that my parents did the best they could because they too had their own fears to manage. In their values of hard work, faith, and belief in the importance of family, they helped create a bond of love and loyalty that binds my siblings and combined children and grandchildren together. We have all emerged as resilient, fiercely protective, and loving adults. I'll leave you with this call to action that I read through the whole Brett Kavanaugh thing that was on the news and everywhere else. It's a poem by Sharon Owens called Dangerous Coats. Someone clever once said, women were not allowed to wear pockets in case they carried leaflets to spread sedition, which means unrest to you and me. A grandiose word for common sense, fairness, kindness, equality. So ladies, start sewing dangerous coats made of pockets and sedition. Thank you.